All right. My name is Dave Tran, and this is Lex TV, shedding and spreading light for the chiropractic student. We have chiropractor Dr. Dan Sullivan calling from Atlanta, Georgia. He graduated from Northwestern in 2004. Dr. Dan, welcome to Lex TV.
It's an honor to be here.
Yes, so let's get right on to it. How did you get your start in chiropractic?
Well, I would say I started similar to many, which I had a testimony. So I got injured when I was a junior in high school, pole vaulting in track, and went down the whole gamut of healthcare providers. My mom was a nurse, so she took me to the best of the best in our little town. Long story short, essentially nothing worked, and I eventually, really, they told me it was in my head, and I was discouraged because I wasn't going to be able to play baseball. Was upcoming. So our family dentist actually said you should try chiropractor, and we'd never, my parents never had even, thought of chiropractor. At that time, I didn't even know, maybe they work with the spine. That's as far as my knowledge went. So anyway, then the rest is history. Kind of where I went there, and I, within 10 or 12 visits, I'm back playing baseball again. So that's all I knew of chiropractic, and I've told this story many times, especially when I speak. I'll tell the story. It's like it's funny at the little things. It's kind of back to BJ. You never know how far-reaching something small may affect the lives. And so this doctor would come in, and every time he'd come in to the office to adjust me, he'd open the door and he'd say, "Dr. Sullivan, it's good to see you today." That just kept. And then eventually he would say, "You need to be you should be a chiropractor. You should be." And at the time, I was kind of at that place where I'm like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. My brothers were going to. We're going into the health field, and so I kind of like, that sounds good. I wouldn't mind doing that because I looked up to them, and so lo and behold, I fell into it, and I committed to, and I actually followed him around, a couple times, and I thought this is what I want to do, and I went to pre-chiropractic, my undergrad I went to pre-chiropractic, and then I went to chiropractic school at Northwestern.
Oh, that's great. One of the things that you kind of created a kind of a social media following, it was like tons of likes, was this whiteboard that I don't know if you have amazing handwriting or is maybe one of your chiropractic assistants, but it was a whiteboard that wrote the power of a chiropractic adjustment. And had this interesting kind of flow through it. So how powerful is a chiropractic adjustment?
Well, you know what, Dave? Let's take a step back, because I'm thinking about that, because I think it's important. The part that I probably didn't leave out as far as my story. So I went to chiropractic, and I would want a student to know this. So I went to chiropractic school thinking that chiropractic is for back pain, and a noble thing, a noble cause. And I was an athlete, so I'm like, I use my hands. I like the idea that I could use my hands and help people heal and get out of pain. But I showed up at the first day of chiropractic college thinking that was kind of the route. Like, this is great. I'm committed my life to chiropractic to help people with pain via my hands. Yes. So it was the first couple weeks in, and I had an upper trimester student come and say, you should go to this talk of this guy. And I didn't, I was kind of, I was attracted to the one thing about me, and like you too, Dave, it's a lot of the students that I know, attracted to the non-status quo. Like you would go to something, and if someone's saying kind of something outlandish, you're going to kind of at least kind of listen and maybe research that, or at least look into it. So this guy, and I'd heard it other chiropractors, say this, but I had a program in my head that I would not be one of those kind of crazy chiropractors that would, think you could go there for, when you get sick and, when you get, So I literally had that thought going into chiropractic school. Well, I show up at this guy, it was Dave Majors, a non-chiropractor, but arguably more chiropractic than
Exactly.
He was doing a talk this is in Richfield, Minnesota. He was doing a talk, must have been for a local doctor. And what he did is I went there, and I spent 45 minutes there, whatever it was, an hour, 45 minutes, and I left there in my 1983 red Prelude stick shift, and I remember driving away from there thinking to myself, I bet that the reason why my dad had a heart attack and has heart problems is because he has a bad back. Yeah. And that was the first time this guy kind of enlightened me to say, wow, there may be something more to the story. And that started this transition for me. And I say it only because of this. So if you're a student, it's always fresh for me to think, if you don't ever go through this process in your head to think to yourself, this thing is a lot bigger than you probably ever imagined to be, and even where you're at right now, it is 1,000-fold more than you think it is, more than I think it is right now.
Yeah.
And I would just encourage you, and this is where I remember, then going through school, and I got involved with technique and philosophy and other things, but I remember leaving school. This was actually during school, I would tell people this, and I even told my little sister this. I'd say, listen, I was going to school for the last however many years. So since high school, I was going to be I knew I was going to be a chiropractor. I wanted to do pre-chiropractic. I went to chiropractic school, and I had no idea up until that, so I went essentially to school for 4 or 5 years before I heard the big idea, and I didn't know what chiropractic was. So think about the rest of the public and what they think of chiropractic.
Mm-hmm.
So it was that thing that kind of really got me to say, if I was going there and I spent all this time even looking into it, studying it, and studying the body, and I had no idea. Think about the lay people, the moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas that have no clue. All they think at most is chiropractic is back. Yeah. Think about how far. So my point is, we have to get, the more we can understand that, the more we can help bridge that gap to show them the power in chiropractic. So this kind of leads to your next question: what is the power in chiropractic? Well, then it kind of led me on this journey, and I don't mean to just keep talking, Dave. This is perfect. So that led me down the other journey. So I graduated chiropractic college and opened up practice in Lincoln, Nebraska, and and things. If you would define success, I mean, to the worldly success, I would say, somewhat successful. Had a cash practice and grew it to over 1,000 visits in 4 years. And I don't say that to be numbers. I don't say it for anything other than I was excited about chiropractic. I knew that that my community was sick and suffering because of a lack of understanding the principle of chiropractic. And if I could just reach them, even though I knew it was going to be hard work, it's not going to be easy. If I could reach them and get in front of them, I could change their perspective, and I counted on that. And I obviously had done things and done training and a lot of things preparing my head and mind and even my processes. But nonetheless, so I get into so I did that, and then then the story goes on, and I ended up doing some coaching and working with a lot of students. So I was in a program where my job was to help coach and train and teach hundreds of students across many campuses chiropractic. And one of the things that led me, but I've always, you asked what's the power of an adjustment. Well, I think on my shoulders, I've always been burned. So I've got 2 brothers who are medical doctors. My mom's a nurse for over 30 years. My sister, one sister that's an occupational therapist. I got a big family. There's 8 of us, same mom and dad, and so obviously a big medical family. So I think I've always carried this thing of prove it. Prove it. Dan, prove it, whether it be to my sister or my dad or my mom or to my brothers or, and then eventually to patients and then my community. And then eventually it got to be where I see now what's going on in our profession and even in the schools and what you're teaching. So you could go to a classroom in chiropractic and you could end up having a PhD teacher that not only doesn't know what subluxation is vehemently opposed to the fact that it exists. Yeah. Then you could go to your next class and you've got a chiropractor that's teaching it, and they say, you know what, yeah, it's just kind of a lesion of the musculoskeletal system. And then you got the next one that's like super on fire, and they got hurt in practice, so they can't practice anymore, otherwise they would be, and now they're teaching, and now they're like, no, this is like the best thing since sliced bread. So then you have to live in this dichotomy. It's like, who do you trust? So this is the thing that brought me kind of this level. So I dove in, and this is one of my passions, drives me to this day, every day, all day, is to truly find out what's the power of a chiropractic adjustment. And I'm going to tell you, without going, too crazy, let me just put it this way. So the best literature is PubMed literature. So if you're going to have, they kind of break things down enough to where they don't just let any articles in or any science. Yeah. So if you're going to look at some the current standard literature of today, it'd be PubMed. Well, let me just assure you that the influence of vertebral subluxation on human physiology based on the best PubMed literature is as solid as you could have, any medical test, procedure, or drug, hands down. Yeah. And I can get to that point. when I say, part of my, let's say my motto, or the fact that I recognize this, is that whether we like it or not, the language of today is science. And unfortunately, again, we think we learn the science in chiropractic school, but there's again not. There's a plethora of science that backs the validity of subluxation and the power of an adjustment. And not only that, is that the power of an adjustment is much more, the power of chiropractic based on the evidence is much more effective in improving visceral and systemic physiology, your organ health, the organ systems of the body. Chiropractic is more effective based on evidence and science at that than musculoskeletal back pain and neck pain.
Yeah.
Now that's a shocker. You walk into your classroom and walk into a, you say, even bring that up, and probably a lot of, that your instructors are laughing you out of the room, and that's the problem. So you put me at the table with them, not that I'm great, I'm not that smart, I'm not that, I just love to be bulletproof, and I would just slide it across the table. He then show me what, prove me this isn't right and this isn't right and this is right. So I've got now kind of a, you can sense a little bit, I just kind of got a fight on my shoulder to say, this is going to have to be a battle, and I'm okay with having it, because who really suffers? The people. Because if you, David Tran, go through school and you're confused, you come out and you don't know what you do and you don't know your value, the next thing you know, you're just doing what an insurance company tells you at best. At worst, you're not even being able to do that because you can't communicate to anybody. You don't know your value, so then you go out of business. You see, this is the dilemma in chiropractic. So I want to help bridge that gap and bring power back to our understanding of that.
Yeah. And, like you recently wrote a thesis along the lines of the adjustment and more focused in on the dysafferentation model for your thesis in the Academy of Chiropractic Philosophers. Like, did you want to kind of touch on that just a little bit?
Yeah, I think the thing that I would want you students to know is that, the old bone out of place pressure on a nerve, and I say old because that's what they used to teach. I mean, you just say, hard bone, soft nerve. Subluxation is the misalignment, occluding a foramen, impinging a nerve. And not that that's not true or not valid or that doesn't happen. I'm here to say the power in what we do scientifically is not in that. In my opinion, it's based on the science. It's in this dysafferentation model. And the dysafferentation model basically says when you have, subluxation, when you have an aberrant, aligned, and moving vertebra, it's sending abnormal input into the seventh layer of the spinal cord, up into the brain, and out into the sympathetic chain ganglia, and that virtually will affect all human physiology in a lot of different ways. Stress hormones, our levels of the whole brain, the neurology of a brain, and neuroplasticity and ability for the brain to change. Yeah. As well as ATP, which is a big, I don't want to get too specific, but we just know that the ramifications of an adjustment, let me give you an example. When an adjustment happens, there's oodles of evidence to show that we immediately increase our levels of ATP or energy, right? Yeah. When we do that, if you look at the literature that backs up, because you can do that, the literature that backs it up, everything from immune system to heart disease, to this will blow your mind, reversing neurodegeneration, dementia, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, epigenetics, changing the epigenetic expression of humanity, which that means that when a male and female come together, the expression, the expression of their DNA is what, is their offspring is created from. We have an influence on that with an adjustment. Yeah. And then the other one is another game changer is telomeres, being able to lengthen telomeres. Some of the best, personalized luxury medicine right now is trying to figure out how to keep people from aging. Well, the best thing we have based in literature is a chiropractic adjustment. So that comes from the dysafferentation model versus just that hard bone on soft nerve model. And I think the more that we can understand that, in my opinion, this is what I want to help chiropractors, help students, and help our profession. The more we can understand that, the better we're going to have certainty in and be able to communicate it.
Absolutely. And you had mentioned earlier that you used to work with a lot of students, hundreds of students across the United States. What would you say would be your greatest advice for students that's in school right now?
Follow David Tran and his methods. And what I mean by that, and there's some truth to that, a lot of truth to that, because I admire what you do, Dave, because you've done a lot. I just see kind of what you do and what you've been up to. It's just to immerse yourself. Immerse yourself. I mean, you go visit offices like you've told me you did. You can get in an office visit, whether it was an office you want to run or not. You can see what you don't want to do just as much as what you do want to do. Yeah. The other thing is get around to speakers. more speakers you can get around. See, I'm not a huge, I like to read, but I'm a slow reader.
Yeah.
It takes me a while to really, own the material. So although I love to read and I pick and choose wisely, I love to listen to stuff. So and when I was a student, I would listen. I would have a 6-hour car drive on the way home, and it would be full of CDs, on purpose CDs, and Sigaboo CDs, and Reggie Gold CDs, and so that listen, immerse yourself in that. The other thing is, you're going to have to learn how to communicate this. The one thing that I did do, and I met a upper trimester. He also a trimester student when I was my first year. He also said, learn the philosophy of chiropractic, and he said, join Toastmaster. And I had no idea what Toastmasters was.
Yeah.
Eventually, was it 2 years later? Someone else said that, and Dave, I took 2 English classes. I took 2 English classes when I was in undergrad, so I didn't have to take a speech class. That's how scared I was to public speak. I hated it. So, but I joined this Toastmaster group because I knew in order for me to get this message, I'm going to have to go one-to-many. At some point, I got to get good at being able to get in front of at least comfortable, at least willing to get in front of a group. So, the other thing I tell you is communication. Learn how to communicate. Learn how to be able to take what you have inside and then get it out. And the last thing I'll say, ask yourself the tough questions before people ask you. Because if you ask yourself, like, this chiropractic, is it true? Chiropractic philosophy, is it right? Is there science that backs up? See, if you ask yourself your questions, then you got to go do the research on your own. And then when you get it asked to you, you'll be like, listen, I've asked myself that a long time ago, and I found the answer. So then you have the certainty in it. So, and again, that's one of the things I want to help bring to the table is truly helping chiropractors, chiropractic students, ask those tough questions and get answers for them.
That's perfect. Dr. Dan, thank you so much for sharing your light with us today. If you want more information or want to connect with Dr. Dan, check out the links below. Every week I will be uploading a new interview with another leader in the chiropractic profession. If you like this video, please share it with your classmates, give this video a thumbs up, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. My name is Dave Tran, and this was Lux TV, shedding and spreading light for the chiropractic student.
Thanks, Dave.